Hello everyone, welcome back to another episode of r/PettyRevenge. In today's episode, neighbors used my property as their own. Paid for a new fence. I cost me neighbors over $100,000. Don't mess with my trash cans. Sael makes ableist comments towards me. Bil gets petty over Facebook. Before we get started, make sure to subscribe so you will never miss a video. So let's get started. Neighbors used my property as their own. Paid for a new fence. I recently bought a house and have been having some work done before I move in. It was empty on the market for about 6 or 8 months before I bought it. One morning I got a call from my contractor asking me about moving the cars in the driveway, and of course I had no idea what he was talking about. I hadn't moved in yet. I left my job site and drove nearly a half hour to get there. As soon as I arrived, the people on the east side of me were walking toward the cars. I asked if they were their cars and they said yes. They told me that they had been parking there for a few months with permission from the owners. I informed them that I was the new owner and they can't park there any longer. We went back and forth, and with the intention of being a good neighbor and trying to show some goodwill, I agreed to allow them to park there for a few more weeks until I move in, with the agreement that they would move them by 6 a.m. every morning. The rest of the week went by without incident. The contractor called me about scheduling a walkthrough on Saturday, and we set a time for early afternoon. When I arrived, there were 4 cars in the driveway, and nowhere to park. The only on-street parking is 2 blocks away. I called them and asked them to move their vehicles, reminding them of our agreement. After 20 minutes, they finally came out and moved them. Speaking with them, they claimed to have misunderstood and thought our agreement only referred to weekdays and not weekends. I corrected them and moved on. Sunday morning, I grabbed a trailer and loaded some furniture to take over and store in the garage. Once again, there were cars in the driveway. I called them and got VM. I texted and said they had until a tow truck could arrive to get them moved. No answer. I called a tow company. 45 minutes later, 2 tow trucks showed up, backed in and hooked up to the cars. All of a sudden, the neighbors were home. They ran out to stop their cars from being towed, and it ended up costing them a little over $300 to get them unhooked. I called my contractor and asked if he knew someone who could put in a driveway gate, and he did. I let the neighbors know that they could no longer use my driveway. On Wednesday, I get a call from the gate installer, telling me that there are cars in the driveway. I called them and said tow trucks are on the way. They moved. The gate was installed and I went by to pick up the opener that evening. The neighbor husband came out to confront me, and I opted to just call the PD and deal with it legally. That Saturday, I went by to accept an outdoor furniture delivery and check on things when I noticed a towel beside the pool and a small kid's flotation device. My initial thought was that I just hadn't noticed it before, so I wrote it off and threw them both in the trash. On Saturday, the movers arrived with everything and we began moving things in. About 7 p.m., my daughter and I left to go grab some dinner, arriving back at the house around 9:30 p.m. The neighbors were in my pool. They were hanging out and using my furniture. When I opened the door and began raising hell, they told the kids to go to the house and the children ran to a corner of our fence and just walked through. They had cut out the privacy fence so it could be removed and had been using the pool at their leisure for who knows how long. Again, I called the police and filed a complaint. The dad was arrested for trespassing, DPP, and an outstanding warrant, and the oldest boy, 20M, for an outstanding warrant. I replaced the fence with a new one, because they had destroyed the posts, runners and pickets by removing and reinstalling the panel. Small Claims awarded me the total cost of 83 foot of 8 privacy fence, which came out to $3,800. The following Monday morning around 5 a.m., their cars were parked in the street, where there's no street parking, so I made a phone call. They were gone when I left at 7 a.m. I haven't been paid yet, but I did notice a for rent sign in their yard this morning, so that's just as good. Good riddance. Edit/update. 1. For those of you suggesting a security system, one was installed that next week, along with 6 cameras around the house, a Ring doorbell, and a fence around the pool itself to keep the dogs and my grandson out of it. I'll be closing and covering the pool in the next few weeks. Met the owner of the house yesterday evening. The house will be empty by the end of the week. They were evicted for non-payment of rent, likely due to tow charges, and the husband not working because he was incarcerated, where he remains. Warrant was for back child support. Wife apologized and claimed that she was told they had permission to use the pool, they didn't. The material for the fence was purchased through my company account. I'm a structural engineer and commercial construction manager for a large local GC. Only 2 posts had to be replaced and a handful of runners. The rest was just 8-foot 1-inch x 6 1/2 pressure treated pickets, which cost me $2.60 per stick, x 210 pickets purchased. The rest was labor and fasteners. So, altogether, about $900 for material and stain. $150 for a dumpster, and the rest went toward labor to finish it on a weekend. Fun fact, I'm also a property investor/flipper. Been in construction, commercial, civil, industrial and residential for 35 years. Not my first fence, nor my first asshole neighbor. Before the paint experts jump on board, I know how long I have to wait before pressure washing and staining the fence. The petty was only my twisting the knife by having their cars towed from the street, when they weren't affecting me at all. I cost me neighbors over $100,000. My neighbors have 9 cars total parked in the street. They always park 2 of those cars in front on my house and won't move them the whole week. We have a regulation where you live that you can't leave your car parked for more than 48 hours in the same spot. My neighbors have a pretty big driveway where they can fit 4 cars, but it's always empty. They have told me they don't like to leave their driveway with cars because it looks tacky. Over half the cars they don't even use them. They just use them to save parking spots for themselves. In 2021 I noticed they were building a second unit on back of their main house. I noticed that they completed the house in under a month. This raised some red flags because it takes anywhere from 2 to 3 months, with city inspections taking the majority of time. I submitted a ticket with my city through the app and advised them that there might be some illegal residential building without permits. I didn't think of it much until a year later. I noticed my neighbors tearing down their second unit last week. Word got around our block that a city inspector was there making sure everything was being torn down. Based on what materials and labor they put into their second unit, I cost them over $100,000. Don't mess with my trash cans. My next-door neighbor is one of those people who believes he is the mayor of the neighborhood. We live on a cul-de-sac, with only 7 houses. He'd berate people whose grass is taller than he feels it should be. He called the cops on me a few times if he could hear music playing outside, not loudly, and even during the daytime. The town deputy who came each time finally measured the volume level with a phone app and told him that it was under 50 dB and therefore permissible, and that he wouldn't come out again for the same complaint. The last straw for me was my garbage can. About 4 feet high, with 2 wheels and a handle to move it up and down the driveway. It was put out every Wednesday night, and the truck came early the next morning to empty it. The neighbor decided he didn't like where I placed it. I take mine out at night, and started moving it when he brought his own can out in the morning. It's a small thing, but eventually I decided it needed to stop. I took a turd from my cat's little box and smeared it on the inside of the handle of the garbage can. It faced away from the street, with the handle on the street side. If you looked from the yard side, you could see little gobs on the inside of the handle, but from the street side, it looked normal. Usually I get up a couple hours after the garbage truck comes by, but that day I was up early and watched from an upstairs window with a cup of coffee. Neighbor wheeled his can down to the end of his driveway, crossed the street, and started to move my can. As soon as H wrapped his fingers around the handle, he jerked his hands away, saw the brown goo on his fingers, and actually sniffed them. He then went totally ballistic, yelling obscenities I could hear from inside. Then he viciously booted my can into my yard, knocking out garbage bags, and then started kicking them, which scattered trash all over my lawn. He then went inside and called the cops. The same deputy arrived about 15 minutes later and spent another 15 minutes trying to calm him down. The neighbor pointed to the handles of the garbage can and kept screaming, "He put sh*t there and I got it on my hands." Eventually, the deputy told the neighbor to stay put and walked across the street to my house. I was already waiting at the front door when he knocked. He addressed me by my first name, since he had been called out before, and said, "Mr. Jones claims you rubbed feces on your garbage can and he got it on his hands when he attempted to move it from the street." I, of course, had rehearsed my reply, and knew better than to deny the obvious. It's my garbage can and I can do whatever I want to it, right? Plus, it was on my property, and he had no business touching it. The deputy was struggling to keep a straight face at this point. And I added, he also tossed trash all over my yard and I shouldn't have to pick it up. The deputy nodded and said, "Yeah, he did admit to doing that." The deputy told me to stay on my porch and walked back across the street to the neighbor, who was already asking what was going to happen to me. I couldn't hear what was said, but the deputy eventually escorted him over to my yard and watched as the neighbor picked up the trash and put it all back into the garbage can that he had to stand back upright by grabbing the rim, not the handle. They went back to the neighbor's driveway and the deputy quietly lectured him for a couple of minutes. I never had any issues with him again. Sael makes ableist comments towards me. Bil gets petty over Facebook. A bit of context: I, F25, am currently pregnant with my wife, F27, and I's first child. My Sael, F32, is pregnant with her second and believes that everything I do with my pregnancy that isn't how she does things is wrong and will hurt the baby. On the other hand, my Bil, M31, and I are great friends, and him and his boyfriend are extremely supportive of my wife and I. About a week ago, Sael called me lazy for buying a bottle machine for bottle prepping and stuck to her opinion when I explained that, being an amputee and missing a hand, I struggle with things that are designed to be used two-handed, telling my wife and I that having a baby isn't supposed to be easy. This has caused a lot of drama within the family, and my Mil asked me to apologize to keep the peace. Bil was furious and got Mil to apologize to my wife and I, but decided to get petty with Sael. Sael got a Facebook memory of a family bike ride 6 years ago and saw that Sael was using in a bike, so he commented lazy on a picture of Sael and her husband in the post. He then went back through Sael's Facebook and commented on every post with anything from a baby bouncer to a laptop to an electric kettle for 3 years with lazy, and she's getting so mad. If you made it to the end of the video, thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share, and we will see you in the next video.